So here we have my son's Cadillac, and it is a what year?
2011 CTS Luxury.
And it's throwing a bunch of indicator lights on the dash. And
the up arrow on the left there, you get to see right there. See that up arrow?
That up arrow.
You get to see those go through.
Don't know really what he's telling me I'm supposed to be seeing here, but service brake assist is showing on the dash. Service traction control. All-wheel drive off. Okay, those are the three messages we're seeing on there. So the indicator lights are lit up like a Christmas tree. And so he got a code reader, and hopefully we can see this, but C0040F 101. MIL history, FSC current, right front wheel speed sensor circuit signal erratic. So that's what we're going to be trying to fix today. So since we don't know exactly what the problem is, he has gone and got most of the things we think could be wrong. Some of them might get returned depending on what we find. But there's the wheel speed sensor. He's got T30 torque sockets or wrenches that are needed to take off the rotor. We've got a piston compressor for the brakes because those have to come off.
May have to come off.
And we've got a new wheel hub in case that's what we find we need. So what we've done is he's put a little blaster on the torque socket that holds the rotor on. We were just discussing this. I hate them. He likes them. I don't know why anybody would like those, because it's a part that's prone to rust, and you could have problems getting it off. And
in the past, with some of the vehicles that had not very good mounting brackets here, it made it tough to hold it in place while you were getting things put back together.
Okay, I never struggled with that. I struggled more with getting that stupid bolt out of there that holds it on than I have with putting caliper brackets back on. What I'm going to do, get the blaster again, is I'm going to tap this a little bit with a hammer to try to create some gaps so that the blaster can get in there better. Hopefully that'll make it easier to take off in the long run. Some people just never learn. My son did this the last time we had his car up on this lift, and he consented to allowing me to show this so that hopefully it'll help somebody else. But yeah, you have to make sure. We've got pucks under there, but he didn't make sure that the pad for the lift was going to clear that rocker panel. Okay, so we've got the pad resituated so that we don't have it sitting on there for a long time bent. It might pop back better. And what he's doing now is he's trying to take off the entire caliper and mount in one unit. Craig, did you try to pry back those pads a little bit before you started that?
I did not.
So first step is going to be to pry back the pads a little bit, and hopefully that can be taken off as one unit and then put back on as one unit, and it'll save us a little bit of time. Sometimes shortcuts don't save you time in the long run, but we're going to try it this time. So it turns out he was trying to use the breaker bar on that to break those caliper bracket bolts loose, and it wouldn't fit because we were using a 6-point socket. A 12-point probably would have worked, but all we have is a 6. And it turned out that he was strong enough to break it loose with just a regular 1/2-inch ratchet. So he's removing those bolts right now. We took off 2 18mm caliper bracket bolts, and we're having trouble getting the assembly off of the rotor because the brake pads were still pressed up against it. What I did is I got a brake spoon, and you might be able to use a screwdriver, but I caught the back edge of this pad here, pried this way, and that gave us a little bit of wiggle room. We did that, by the way, with one of the caliper bolts, or caliper mounting bolts still in there. That's what he was just taking out. So now we're able to wiggle that off.
Hey, kiddo.
Okay. We got that hung up there with a couple of
S-hooks.
S-hooks, and now we're going to wrap the torque spit that holds it in there again. A little bit more of blaster, and we're going to let Muscles do his thing and see if he can break that loose. Okay, Muscles is going to try to get that Torx bolt out of the hub, out of the rotor, and looks like success.
4 applications of blaster before we even tried it.
And tapping on it with a hammer to jar it loose. So those are some tricks you may or may not need, but it's wise to do those before you go trying to force it out and strip the head of the bolt. Then you're kind of left with drilling it out, which isn't any fun.
And probably using a half a die set to clean it up.
Okay, fortunately the hub came off very easily, or the rotor came off very easily off of the hub. And a breaker bar to the hub nut. And the nut's turning. Okay.
Think about that for a minute.
The next option is we're going to try the impact wrench. By the way, we had to use a 1 3/8, was it, Craig? Socket on it, because the biggest metric socket we had was 32, and that was way too small. The 1 3/8 fits very well. So since that hub was turning, he went to get an impact socket. Now I realize everybody that's attempting this job may not have an impact socket or an impact wrench available. So had that not been available, what I probably would have done is try to wedge a 2x4 or something in between, and the 2x4 isn't going to fit. Some piece of wood, or maybe a rubber protected metal bar in between these studs here to prevent this from turning while someone else loosens the nut. That's about all you can do. If you don't have another person available and you get a bar in there, and I'll just demonstrate what I'm talking about. I have a pipe here, but I'd want to protect the lug nuts. Even that's tight. maybe you could do it with one. And if you're not on a lift, you might be able to wedge this up against the ground. Or maybe, you know, a smaller thing to put in there. But you got to keep that from turning while it's being loosened. Here we have the big Craftsman screwdriver, which is useful for hundreds of things. Probably could go like that. The other thing that I have, what maybe a lot more people have than impact wrenches, is a breaker bar. And again, it'd be nice if you had a piece of rubber in between here and here to protect the threads on those, but one of those things ought to allow you to get it off. So I find a piece of plastic electrical conduit with my Craftsman screwdriver in between. That would work. That would protect your lug nuts from being stripped. The screwdriver would give you the strength. And as I was talking about this stuff, I saw another thing that could work. I have a couple of 21-inch, I believe they are, extensions, and I don't know if a 1/2-inch one would fit in there, but a 3/8 certainly will. So here goes the attempting to remove it with the impact wrench. There's just a tiny bit of rust on the threads here. So I'm going to take a wire wheel and clean them up. So we didn't film it because I was taking a break, but my son went and got the better impact wrench. We have basically a low air pressure compressor up here and a cheap impact wrench, so he went and got the good one and it took it right off. So the next step is to take the old hub off, because you have to do that regardless. But basically we're looking at, there are 3 bolts that hold it in. They're 13mm head on them, so that's the socket you're going to need to take those off. We're on the last bolt coming out that's holding the hub on, and we're going to see how lucky we get on how that comes off. Hopefully we won't need to get the puller out, slide hammer out, but we'll find out. So now he's putting the attachment for the slide hammer on that's going to be able to pull that hub off of there. If you don't have a slide hammer available, it is possible to just get a screwdriver or something small behind there, but my experience is it Usually takes a lot longer than putting the slide hammer on, and usually you can go borrow one off of someplace like AutoZone, and that makes the job a whole lot shorter. Or it should.
Or if you have those.
Because I don't think either of us have ever used one of these, have we?
We have not.
I have not.
We've normally done it with 3-jaw pullers.
Yeah, that's another way that you can do it. But I think the slide hammers.
That's stubborn.
It looks like a really nice slide hammer. Unfortunately, it's not doing anything at the moment.
Yeah.
Look like it's doing anything.
I see no separation.
So one of the things that I've always done in the past is try to get some rotational movement on it by timing it. Unfortunately, you can't get much of a swing here. There might be a little bit of movement there.
Maybe a little separation at the top.
Why do you keep having to tighten it?
I don't know. Okay, it's looser. Then we should.
Maybe you should put a wrench on that.
I was just gonna say that.
Whoa. Getting it.
Okay. Put a wrench on it.
Do this top one. You know what?
Something's changing.
You know what? It's separate. It's separated. The spindle is moving in and out. The axle is moving in and out on it, and that's probably why we're not getting as good a pull as we would like to.
You are correct, sir.
So we're going to try to tighten those up, put a little bit of a wrench on them, make sure they're tight on the hub itself, and that that it's in alignment, so that it's pulling directly off of that axle instead of trying to bind it up maybe on that axle. But the axle's moving in and out. It's just attached to the I don't know what that part's called. I normally would call it a spindle, but there's no spindle involved here, I don't think. So we've got that tightened a whole lot better. Turns out
It wouldn't even go down that far before, so something's changed.
well, the axle is being pushed back now. That's why it's going down further onto the.
This is now able to seat.
Yeah, it's seating on the hub now, whereas you were hitting the axle before.
Yep.
So,
Ready?
we're ready. Thing is stubborn.
Ready?
Okay. There is some movement on it now because the back plate is loose. Moving more and more. But it's not moving quickly, that's for sure. Let me try something here. That's gonna be much.
No, it's not substantial enough. Maybe go get some chisels. Sorry. It's not really changed much. That's a lot of strikes for no change. It's not really from the backside there.
It's not what?
It's not moving. I mean, there's no indication of movement from the backside.
Now, it's got to be moving some though, because we see the
I mean, from when I looked last
oh, okay.
to now, I see no real indication of movement.
Well, we probably should have done this earlier, but the little blaster around where it's pressed in there
Maybe from the backside as well. Maybe you can get some penetration.
may help free that up. I can see that it's going in this little gap we've got here, so it'll probably get into some of that backside. But this is going to be tough. Hard to even aim the nozzle. Okay, it's pretty well soaked.
Here. Here.
What?
So are you.
So am I. Just a little bit. Not much. Worth the effort. We'll let that set a bit. So what we're doing now, that thing was a little bit cocked and it was coming off at the top but not the bottom. So what we're doing is we're putting the bolts that hold it on back in to draw it back up against that spindle and level it out before we go at it anymore with the slide hammer. So what we've done so far is, because that was cocking a little bit and that was causing extra friction, the top one and the one towards the rear of the car seemed to be pretty loose. It was the one towards the front, and I'm talking about the bolts that hold it in from the back. But that seemed to be where it was not coming out. So what we did is we put those bolts in and we only gave it a very small amount of play on the top and the back, and we don't have a bolt in the bottom. So the top and back can only come so far before we get to a point where any movement has to occur on the bottom. So hopefully that'll keep us straight, and we're going to do it a few whacks at a time to see how that works at keeping it straight and helping it come out. The other thing that we've done is, since the last time we tried this, we put the PB blaster around it, so hopefully that's starting to take effect by now. Okay, we're going to take a few whacks at it, see what happens. It's wiggling better than it did, so it might come out straight. We're probably at the point where we can loosen up these two that are holding it back just a little bit.
I'm about to look at it with my hand.
I did mine. And again, just a little bit. Okay, do a couple whacks.
Did it come off?
It's good. Did it with the slide hammer a couple times. Try to kind of lift up.
Yeah, Ben.
It's better than it was. Keep going. It's not tense.
Still no.
Don't know. Okay.
Let's see if these are no longer hand tight.
Stop trying to lift up so much,
I can spin them both.
because maybe it needs to come down now. No, not changing.
Goodness. This one's no longer hand tight.
So we may have some progress there.
Good job from that side. Let's get the other one in. No?
Huh?
Let's put the other one in now.
But that's not the one that's the problem.
Well, I don't want to cock it the other way.
We'll address that when we get to it.
Alright.
I'm thinking that it's not gonna come that easy.
There we go. Do you see any separation?
Down here, well, I know it's separated a little because I can move that plate and it's moving, it wasn't moving down here.
It's moving every direction.
Yeah. So. Right on. Almost, it's a shame you can't, but if you could pound on these bolts from the back, it would
Probably pop right out.
probably pop right out. But you can't.
Well, this is just a little bit hand movable. There's the wrench go. You got it?
So it must have moved a little. There you go. Going the wrong way.
I pulled it out and I got hung up, so put it back in. I wouldn't expect it to be getting hung up. There's no rust on these, so at least there wasn't until we started beating it.
That's good enough for now. It is finger tight.
Still loose.
It's still loose.
Can't spin it.
There's a big gap down here.
You see space, you might see space, but I couldn't spin it. Gee.
Allergic to working on cars. There's plenty of room there. I'm wondering if we ought to make the trip to the barn for the chisels. So, after struggling for a couple hours, having an injury, and going to the internet, we did find a trick to help us dislodge this. And basically, I'm going to have him go and turn the wheel to the left so that I can take out this piece that we made and try to explain how we got it out. And a shout out to Brian's Mobile One where we found this. It was a struggle for us because the car is different, and we had a hard time finding the right combination of sockets and extensions to make a brace so that we could use the actual power steering system as a hydraulic press, which was what Brian's trick was. So what we're basically doing here, go ahead, go. If you see, he's turning the wheel, and that is pushing on the bolt that is connected here and pushing this hub out. So that's enough, Craig, I think. So basically we have a bunch of extensions and then a socket on the head of this bolt. And we unthreaded it so that when we turned the wheel, it would give resistance and the spindle would turn, and therefore the hub would stay connected to the bolt and the spindle pushed it out. So I should have had you turn it to the right so I can get this out of here, but basically it's out now. We need to get that bolt out of there that we've been using as the pusher. Craig, so we need to turn to the right, left.
The other left.
Yeah, the other left.
How's it going?
We're having success.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good. Because it's 10 to 3, just in case.
Okay.
Oh, I see something happening with the light.
Okay. Keep going. I got to get the series of. Okay, that's good. So this is the set of extensions and adapters and eventually a socket that we wedged between the frame and that bolt so that when we turned the wheel this way, it wouldn't move and it pushed out on the hub. So right now the hub is basically out, but we still have to get that one bolt, Craig.
You didn't.
Oh.
I didn't take it out. So now we're cleaning up the corrosion on the inside of that hub mount with a wire wheel, and we're going to put some wheel bearing grease on it so that hopefully it doesn't bond to it like that in the future. Now, what we found once we got the hub out, let's see, you can see the magnetic ring, there's a part of it missing right there. And that would be the intermittent signal from the sensor. So we believe the sensor is good. We're going to put the hub on and try it with the existing sensor and see if that fixes the problem. Okay, so just so I don't forget what we used, because this car has two sides and we only did one, I did my long extension from the 3/4 inch socket set, Harbor Freight. I have a impact adapter from 3/4 to a 1/2. Then I have a 1/2 inch extension from my crescent set, which looks to be about 5 inches. And then I have the 13 millimeter socket from my crescent set, and that worked wonderfully. Any other combination we tried, the front of it here was interfering with the boot on the CV joint on the axle, and we couldn't get it into the place where this had the set so that we could use it as a press. So what we did is we cleaned up that inside of that hub with a wire wheel, put the bolts through the spindle and the backing plate, the dust cover, and then put the hub on, tighten those 3 bolts, and now we're getting ready to torque the axle nut. So spec on that is 158 pounds. We looked at it a couple places, and we're probably going to need to use one of the tricks that I was telling you about earlier in order to hold that axle from turning. So he's gotten to the point where he can't do it by himself, hold it and torque it at the same time, so I'm going to try and hold it while he torques it. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if this is, that's kind of bending. It's just the plastic. Okay, so we cleaned off the rotor with brake cleaner, and a good point to remember here is when you have one of those little bevel head screws that holds the brake rotor on, you got to make sure that's lined up with the hole in the hub before you put it on, or else it's not going to work too well. So once we're done with that...
We didn't forget that, by the way.
We didn't forget it, no. So once that's tightened, the next step is to put the caliper mount back over the rotor, and we can then bolt the caliper back on. Keep in mind, we pushed that back a little bit in order to get it off. So when you get back in the car, you got to pump those brakes and make sure that those pads are up against that rotor before you move it, or your brake pedals are going to go all the way to the floor and you're not going to have any brakes. So very important to remember to do that. And then after that, we'll just put the tire back on, torque the lug nuts, and the job should be done. Might as well video the installation of the caliper and caliper mount. Getting tired, Craig? Just, are you getting tired?
No.
You need help lining that up?
It's not going yet.
Anything?
It's not going yet. But no. I'll get it. The top one. Here.
It's probably not on right now. Did you get it started?
Nope.
One of the things I'll say that when you watch my videos, you see all the struggles. I don't, I don't make it look easier than it is. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes
It's really not.
it's not. You need me to hold that.
91.
Obviously, if they're not seating, they're not lined up.
Well, obviously, and I've been wiggling them. Up and out of it.
Once we get one, the second one will drop easy.
Yeah, so I got started.
I got started too. There you go. So, tighten those babies up. Since you're almost ready to put the tire on, I'll set the torque wrench to 100 foot-pounds. Oops. Okay, when you hear the grunt, that's how you know it's tight enough.
Seriously?
Done?
Done.
Okay, time to lower the car so we can put the tire on. Ah, this is starting to smell like victory. Getting the tire back on.
Yeah.
Did you mess up the...
We need to grind that down. These are the ones that we put on the
puller? The slide hammer?
Yep.
Yeah, they got a little bit nicked.